In Ukraine this morning, Secretary of State Tony Blinken speaking exclusively to NBC's Richard Engel before wrapping up his visit to the war-torn nation. The secretary insisting that Ukrainian forces are making, quote, tangible progress in the brutal counteroffensive against Russia. This after a Russian missile struck a market yesterday, killing 17 Ukrainians, including a child.
Now that we're in more of this slow, incremental, very costly in terms of lives phase of this war, do you think it's harder to keep the American public on board?
Look, it's always challenging to keep people's attention on any one issue for any period of time because so much is happening around the world. It will end at some point with diplomacy, but the Russians have to get to a point where they acknowledge that they failed. They are not going to succeed. They've already failed in what they were trying to do, which is to erase Ukraine from the map, to end its identity as an independent country, to subsume it into Russia. That's failed.
So would you say that it's up to Russia right now to come to the table? What about
Russia,
Ukraine? Do you think Ukraine needs to make some concessions as well?
There's no one to go to the table with in the case of Ukraine because Putin right now shows no evidence that he's interested in meaningful diplomacy.
And joining me now is NBC News' chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel. He is in Kyiv. And retired Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, a former National Security Council Director of European Affairs. He was, of course, born in Ukraine and was a witness in the impeachment hearings of Donald Trump. Richard, let's start with you. Talk about the significance of the Ukrainian town where you spoke to Secretary Blinken, and then give us some of the highlights of your exchange.
So we spoke about a 2-hour drive north of Kyiv, and it was an area that was held by Russian troops. He talked about how the Russians failed in their initial intention of the war. The Russians, under Putin, decided to take over this country, and there was an active campaign a year and a half ago to capture Kyiv, and they never managed to do that. But they did manage to capture and occupy the suburbs around Kyiv as they tried to take the capital. And while they were holding those suburbs, Russian forces carried out well-documented atrocities. And some of those atrocities took place in this village where the secretary visited today. In particular, he went to a school that Russian troops turned into a detention center. And they took villagers who they were suspicious of and locked them in the basement. Hundreds of people in freezing, terrible conditions, so dank that 10 people died from disease and deprivation, and another 15 were executed, according to witnesses. 17 were executed, excuse me. So he went there, he saw for himself what it was like for the Ukrainians to live under this brutal occupation for months until Ukrainian forces were able to drive the Russians out of this village. And now we're in the counteroffensive phase of this war, and Ukrainians are trying to drive Russians not just away from the suburbs of Kyiv, they are trying to drive them out of all of Ukrainian territory, and that is where they are running into the Russian trenches and the fortified Russian positions down in the south and in the east. But what was significant, and you mentioned this in the introduction, is that they are now, not just Secretary Blinken, I'm hearing this from a variety of sources, starting to see real tangible progress. 3 months into this intense counteroffensive, they are starting to see not major collapses of the Russian military like we saw a year ago, but they are starting to see breaks. They're starting to see opportunities. They're starting to see some momentum on the Ukrainian side.
All right, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, you served in Iraq, so give us a sense from your perspective how you think this counteroffensive is going, and how concerned are you about the political opposition here at home to more funding for the war?
It's great to see Secretary Blinken in Ukraine showing support to the president, the population. The war is going relatively well. I don't want to overstate the gains by the Ukrainians, but the reason that they were successful last fall, is because Russia was hollowed out. Russian military forces were hollowed out, especially in the east. That has happened over the course of the previous 2 months. This was not necessarily going to be a quick lightning strike to regain territory quickly. It was about depleting Russian forces. Russia has committed its strategic reserve to the areas where the Ukrainians are making penetrations. The Ukrainians continue to gain ground. It is likely that momentum is going to pick up, and the Ukrainians are going to hit some of their markers with territory. they've already hit significant markers with regards to attrition to Russian personnel. So this is going to end up relatively successful from a military standpoint, from the reducing Russia's ability to wage war and from liberating territory and putting enormous pressure on Russia in the south and sustaining Crimea. With regards to the most important question, Western and U.S. support, I am concerned about waning support from the right side of the aisle, and in particular. I think there are 70 Republicans that in the House that voted against or voted to cut support to Ukraine. There has to be another appropriation, $24 billion from the administration has been requested for support for the next year, starting in October. That is in peril. I think the fact is that there is a far-right faction, a Trump-captured faction, that is looking to cut support to Ukraine, regardless of how critical that support is to U.S. national security, to European stability. If Ukraine is not successful and this war extends really significantly beyond 2024, Russia mobilizes to its entire society, its entire population, its entire industrial base, things could get very, very precarious, and the risk of spillover increases. So more is better. That support needs to come in the dollars and in critical equipment. ATACMS, planes, helicopters that are not really kind of central to the discussion yet are going to be all critical capabilities to come to Ukraine.
Okay, and we do need to touch on another topic, but we need to do it quickly. So, Richard, what did the secretary say about North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visiting Russia this month to meet with Vladimir Putin?
So the secretary described that as an act of desperation because Vladimir Putin, who's low on ammunition, the Russian troops are low on ammunition, just as the Ukrainians are. He needs specifically ammunition that will fit inside Russian systems, and North Korea has them. So it's debatable whether this is an act of desperation or this is a win-win for North Korea and for Russia. It has a potential to solve a problem for Russia. Is it embarrassing, perhaps, that Russia has to go to North Korea to ask for weapons? Perhaps. But at the end of the day, Russia needs these weapons. North Korea has them, and has them in large numbers.